Welcome to Pyjama Chats. Thanks for joining us again for May. Oh my goodness, the year is flying past. May's Positive Pyjama Chats. We're all about, as Penny was just talking about, the whole point of life is what happens to us. It's only 10% of what happens to us, and 90% of the time we actually have control of how we respond to this. I'm even having trouble getting the words out today. So there's obviously some reactions going on in here for lots of people. The reason I decided to talk about that whole gap when it feels like those relationships, that percentage is the other way around, and we really hit this reality gap where we feel like it's actually only 10% that we have charge over, is because in the last week I've had two lovely ladies in their 80s come in. One's come in to see me, the other one's booked in and is coming to see me, but they've both just lost their husband in the last 3 months. So this is a major reality check. This is a major thing that is going on, obviously, for them, an all-consuming thing for one of them, and I think the other one has got a better handle on that whole 10% and 90% challenge. But when you've been with somebody for 60 years, that is all of your life that you can remember, that's a big reality check. So I've called the talk today, Mind the Reality Gap, because sometimes it really feels like there's a massive gap in that whole 90% that we actually have charge of. Sometimes it just, those big things that happen in life, whether they're moving house, whether they're death of a spouse, whether there's something going wrong health-wise with a family member, or any other challenge. It could be a financial challenge. It could be in all these rains that we've had recently. It could be things that are going on with the house or a car or other big things that happen in life. But I wanted to remind you about this whole cycle, because our thoughts are where we do have that 90% power. Our thoughts lead to emotions. How we feel is based on the thoughts that we have. We get inspired to follow up with actions based on the emotions that we feel. Those actions, of course, lead to results. And the more we do these thoughts, emotions, actions, results, it leads to embedded habits and beliefs. The more we hold those beliefs, we begin to identify with those beliefs, and that then becomes our identity. As I've said before, right from the very beginning, these emotions lead to a state or a filter, how we see the world. And this is really where our thoughts kick in, and that whole ratio of 90-10 really kicks in. Having that state as a power state where we sometimes feel like we have to put rose-coloured glasses on, but that filter changes our perception of the world. Are we sinking into and letting our whole world be overcome with emotion, or are we taking a step back and really getting some distance? I was reminded of this story. It's a Chinese fable. So many years ago, there lived a wise old farmer. He was proud of his son. He was proud of his farm. He was proud of his horse. And for many years, he had worked this farm. One day, this fabulous horse that he was so proud of bolted away. He escaped. His neighbours dropped past to commiserate him on the awful luck that he'd had. They sympathised with him. And what did the farmer say? We'll see. Meaning, who knows? Meaning, stepping away from our reality, or what looks like is happening, is where the power is. Meaning, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but who knows? What happened next? To everybody's surprise, the horse returned. bringing with him several wild horses. So now not only did the farmer have one fabulous horse, he had a multitude of beautiful wild horses. The neighbours dropped past again and came this time to congratulate him on his fabulous good luck. "How exciting is that?" they exclaimed. And the wise man said again, "We'll see." As it happened, the next day, his son was trying to train these horses. One of them threw him to the ground. In that, he broke his leg. Oh my goodness. The neighbours were back again to console and share their condolences with the farmer. And all the farmer simply replied was, "We'll see." A few days passed, and all of a sudden, the village was visited by the emperor's army. They were there to recruit, to conscript men for the army, for the emperor's army. There was a war on. They took all of the young men from the village, but of course, the farmer's son, they left because of his broken leg. Well, the neighbours dropped by again. They were so jealous. They were just gobsmacked by the luck of this farmer, that his son wasn't conscripted into the army. "Well," said the farmer, "we'll see." So when things happen, it is empowering to stay centred, to not get too excited by anything that's wonderful, and to not get too downtrodden when things don't go to plan, when your computer doesn't work and it doesn't look like things are happening the way they should be. I've recently read this book by Dr. Russ Harris that inspired me in this reality gap. He calls it the reality slap. It's all about how to bridge that gap between the rose-coloured glasses that we want to put on and where we feel reality has put us. It's all about being able to bridge that gap, to step back into our happiness, into our positivity, and into our power. So Russ talks about creating separation between our thoughts. Now, this reminded me a lot of meditation, and you might see the similarities too. But what he talks about isn't directly meditation, it's just simply being in a place of curiosity. It is simply being in a place where we are curious about what thoughts we have. We're in a place underneath those thoughts, and we can watch them going past rather than attach them. We can watch as the good thoughts go past. We can watch as the challenging ones come up. I recall Louishaye, that was her name. Louishaye talks about emotions being with us for all of 10 minutes. If we can sink into them, in 10 minutes, they'll change. So if you can bear with it, let that depression, let that sadness, let that fear or anger or whatever it is pass by for those 10 minutes, you'll come through the other end. If you can stop what you're doing, don't stop the thoughts. They're like a tidal wave. Don't try and stop the thoughts. But stop what you're doing and allow those thoughts to pass by, says Dr. Harris. That enables us then to breathe and refocus, knowing that the thoughts themselves, as overpowering as they feel, are just thoughts. They can't harm us. They can't hurt us. They are just simply thoughts. Take the time to let them pass and let them be. Then you can refocus and move on to the next part of your journey. Sometimes it feels like you're taking those just one at a time, one after the next, after the next. And it might be only 10 minutes at a time, but sometimes it feels like those 10 minutes just keep coming at you. Sometimes we need to be aware that there are really only 4 challenging emotions. Everything boils down to fear, anger, sadness, and guilt. Now, you might be feeling frustrated rather than angry. You might be feeling anxious or nervous rather than fearful. But all of those emotions come down to fear, anger, sadness, and guilt. Guilt is particularly strong if you feel that you may have had any element in in contributing to whatever the scenario is. But if we can come down deeper under that fear, anger, sadness, and guilt, we can get to a place of love. And this reminds me of what I've been hearing recently in audios on YouTube from Esther Hicks and the Abraham community. Esther talks about, or they talk about, that it's almost like a stick. So if you're focusing on anything, it's basically polarized. You might be feeling the anger. That's because there is so much love that you have for whatever it is that has got your attention. You might be absolutely devastatingly grief-stricken and sad because of a lost loved one. When it boils down to it, when you get underneath it, it's because of that intense love that you had and have still for them. That person in your heart, in your mind, whether they're here on the planet or not, are still a part of your reality. And the intense feelings that you have when things don't go as planned is because of that intense love, that intense gratitude, that intense feeling of happiness that you have around that thing or that person. I've done exercises with a coach, Paul Blackburn, and he talks about an amazing process, and I've heard it elsewhere as well. But he talks about an amazing process that he describes as colour, shape, and texture, where you take time, and this again comes back to Dr. Russ's explanation of creating that distance between you and the emotion. If we can picture that emotion as a colour, as a shape, as a texture, describing all the characteristics of that emotion. Find where you feel it in your body. It could be in your big toe, it could be in your head, it could be in your heart. It doesn't matter. Could be in your gut. Wherever that emotion is, we can go through this process in our chat. But wherever you find that emotion, talk to it. Find what it needs. Look at its colour, shape, and texture. Describe it to somebody else or just to yourself. That can really help you to find a distance so that you're not in that emotion. You can create that distance more. One of the most powerful exercises that I have done more recently is by Ben Elliott, who is an NLP extraordinaire. He calls it the when X, do Y. Very simple. But I have had frustration, which as I said is anger, come up recently around different things, whether they be a challenging client, finances, or other things. But that's the emotion that has come up most recently for me. I decided in a workshop with Ben that when that emotion came up, when the frustration came up, when X happens, I would do Y. My Y was focus on gratitude. That could be gratitude for having 2 feet and 2 hands. That could be gratitude for having a fabulous husband. That could be gratitude for having a family around me that supports me. It could be a gratitude for having wonderful friends. It could be gratitude for clients that are choosing to come in and see me this week. There are innumerable things that you can be grateful for. What is it for you? What is the why for you? Because it doesn't have to be even gratitude. That was just an X and a Y example that I chose. They've been really powerful, I might add, in helping me to move through that frustration. And if you were on last month, you know that I was even waking up with that emotion at 3 a.m. and finally able to shift it with that focus on gratitude. That changed my whole day. And this month is being even more different than previous months as a result. And I'm really excited about where that's taking us. But that's a whole other story. The goal at the moment is to help you find exercises that can help to create that distance for you when life is tough and you really get that reality gap. And it's not as simple as putting on those rose-coloured glasses to have a positive attitude today. Thank you very much. But of course, the more we focus on those whys, those changed directions, when X happens, do Y, the more we focus on those differences, we change our habits. And I wanted to leave you with a quote from Gandhi in light of those habits, in light of today's change of perception. He says, "Watch your thoughts, for they become your words. Watch your words, for they become your actions. Watch your actions, for they become your habits. Watch your habits, for that becomes your character. And watch your character, for it becomes your destiny." And on that note, I would like to thank you for joining us in Positive Pyjama Chats in May. I'd like to open the door for a chat and hear from you today. What things are going on that you'd like to move through? What fear, anger, sadness, guilt is staring you in the face and giving you the biggest reality gap at the moment?